Dim the lights. Let the hum of the modern world fade away. Now take a breath, slow, deep, and steady. And let us step back in time. The morning is still young. The first pale light of dawn spills across the earth like spilled wine over polished stone. Somewhere beyond the mist, a legion stirs. You hear it before you see it. The creak of leather straps, the clink of iron, the soft grunt of a man hauling his shield into place. The air is thick with the smell of olive oil, sweat, and smoke from dying embers. The red banners ripple gently in the chill breeze, catching the light like blood against the sky. Imagine standing there, barefoot in the dewy grass, the cold biting at your skin. You grip your gladius, fingers stiff from sleep. Around you, other men rise, farmers, slaves, freedmen, even former enemies, now bound together by the same oath, the same fate. Sons of Rome, all of them. They don't speak. Not yet. Only the centurion's voice cuts the silence, low, commanding. Today, another march. Tomorrow, perhaps war. But this moment, this fragile, golden hour before the noise, it belongs to memory. This is not the story of emperors or marble palaces. This is the story of one man, a legionary. His journey from boyhood to battlefield. From solemn oath to final breath. His fears. His hopes. The brotherhood he built in the dust and fire of 1,000 miles. Walk beside him. Feel the weight of his armor. Hear the drumbeat of boots on ancient roads. See the world through the eyes of a man sworn to fight, to die, and to never, ever turn his back on Rome. Let us follow the echo of those footsteps, into the heart of an empire. And so it begins. The banners rise in the wind, snapping like whips against the gold-washed sky. Below them, 1,000 men stir in near-perfect unison, metal groaning, leather creaking, breath steaming into the cold air of early morning. It is not yet war, but it smells like it. Oil, sweat, smoke, and dust cling to the fibers of every cloak and every tunic. Somewhere beyond the camp, the gods are watching. And so are we. Imagine standing at the edge of a Roman encampment, just as the sun begins to yawn above the horizon. You are not a visitor, not a noble. You are barefoot. Your tunic is thin. Your hands calloused and your mouth dry with the quiet thrill of fear. You're about to take your first step into the machine of Rome. This story, your story, begins not in triumph, not in bloodshed, but in longing. You've left behind a village, a vineyard, perhaps a family. Or perhaps there was nothing to leave behind at all. This is how most began. Not all Roman soldiers were Romans. That's the first myth to cast into the fire. The legions were mosaics, Gauls with pale eyes, Iberians with quick tempers, Thracians who drank stronger than they marched, and dark-skinned archers from the fringes of Africa who whispered prayers in languages older than Latin. Rome was not a nation. It was an appetite. And the legions were its teeth. You stand among hundreds, maybe thousands. Bare legs in the dust. A recruiter, a thick-necked veteran with a voice like gravel, paces in front of you. He does not smile. His armor is older than you, dented like a hammered shield. He speaks of pay. 25 years of it. A modest fortune, or so they say. He speaks of land. A plot to call your own when your bones are too brittle to march. He speaks of glory. The eternal kind. Your name carved into stone. Songs sung. Statues raised. He does not speak of wounds. Of sand and open cuts. Of arrows that whisper before they bite. Of screams in the dark and the long, shuddering silences after. He doesn't have to. You already know. So why do they join? Why did you? Because a soldier eats. Because a soldier has shoes. Because a soldier stands taller than the men who once spat at his feet. For some, it was desperation. For others, it was duty. And for a rare few, it was belief. Rome, after all, was not just a place. It was an idea. and you were about to be swallowed by it. The training ground lies just beyond the edge of the settlement, a bare stretch of earth churned by boots and blood. Recruits are drilled from the moment they arrive. There are no names yet. Only numbers. Only orders. You will learn to march until your feet blister and your mind detaches from your body. You will carry packs heavier than your pride. You will run, not for speed, but for survival. And when your arms tremble from holding a wooden sword thicker than your own thigh, a centurion will sneer and whisper that the real one weighs more. It is here, in this exhaustion, that the first fractures appear. Some men break. Quietly. They do not scream or weep. They simply vanish in the night, into the brush, into the black. Some are caught. Their punishment becomes lesson. One morning you find yourself standing over a blood-dark patch of earth where a deserter's feet once danced at the end of a rope. No one says a word. The silence is its own sermon. And still, most stay. Why? Because they begin to change. Not just in body, but in posture. In belief. The man beside you, once a stranger with too much stubble and too little charm, shares his bread when your stomach growls. Another, scarred, slow-spoken, wraps your ankle after a twisted march, without a word, and limps beside you so you're not left behind. You begin to laugh again. Quietly at first. Then louder. The kind of laughter that only lives between men who ache together, bleed together, and learn to fear the same things. You have no name here. But you are not alone. One evening, before dusk, the Optio hands you a sheet of parchment. You cannot read it. You do not need to. It is the oath. You are about to swear the sacramentum, the solemn vow that binds flesh to empire. You will swear to obey the commands of your superiors. To never desert. To never break formation. To never retreat unless commanded. And above all, to remain loyal to Rome. To the death. Before the oath, you are a man. After it, you are property. Your life belongs to the empire. Your breath to the legion. Your sword to Caesar, or whatever emperor now sits beneath a purple canopy and dreams of maps and spoils. The ritual is simple but sacred. You place your right hand upon your chest, or your sword. Some kneel. Some stand. The centurion speaks the words, and you repeat them, voice steady despite the sweat on your palms. It is done. No fanfare. No celebration. Only a strange, electric silence. You are now a soldier of Rome. That night, the fire crackles a little louder. You drink a cup of cheap wine with men who no longer feel like strangers. You eat bread soaked in oil and laugh at a crude joke you don't quite understand. You watch the stars overhead, stars that hung above your childhood. But you are not that boy anymore. You are a cog in the greatest war machine the world has ever known. You are a legionary. And the road before you is long. You rise before the sun the next day. Your armor is not yet comfortable. It pinches in places no one tells you about. Your helmet rests crooked on your head, the weight foreign, the smell of iron thick. But you walk. Mile after mile. Not just on roads. Through forests, across rivers, up cliffs. The centurion shouts, but you no longer flinch. Your legs ache, but you no longer limp. You are hardening. Your voice joins the chorus during drills, sharp, rhythmic, full of breath and purpose. And when the older soldiers march past, they do not laugh at you anymore. They nod. Just slightly. You begin to feel it, the strange pride that curls in your chest when your unit forms up cleanly. When your shield locks with your neighbors. When your pilum flies true into a wooden target, deep and final. This, you realize, is no mob. This is a machine. And you are a part of it. At night, the older soldiers tell stories. Of Parthia. Of Germania. Of places so cold your nose bleeds just from breathing. So hot your skin peels before you're halfway across the dunes. They speak of battle like men recounting old lovers. with laughter, with longing, with quiet, haunted eyes. They never talk of the dead. Not directly. Only of the ones who never came back. But you learn to read between the silences. In one corner of the camp, a soldier sharpens his blade. It is not for show. He whispers to it. Calls it by name. Says it saved him in a valley where no reinforcements came. Only crows. In another corner, a Gaul smokes a twisted herb that smells like old dreams. He says it helps him see the battlefield before it comes. A Numidian with a spear scar across his cheek drinks alone. No one joins him. But no one mocks him either. He's the last of his contubernium, his tent mates. They say he walked out of a forest soaked in blood and silence. No one asks for the tale. Still, there are new recruits every season, and each one stands where you once stood, wide-eyed, half-starved, eager. Some will rise, some will rot, but all will march. And you will march beside them, because Rome does not sleep. And her sons? Her sons learn to dream with open eyes and their hands on the hilt of a blade. So come. The banners are raised. The boots are tied. The blood is warm. Let us step forward, into the oath to Rome. The sun rises higher now, burning off the last threads of morning mist. Somewhere behind you, the training grounds echo with the thud of boots and the crack of commands. But ahead? A quiet grove just beyond the camp's edge, where rituals are held and oaths are whispered not just into the air, but into the bones of men. The legion doesn't sleep. Even when the drills pause, the camp pulses, like a lung slowly filling, releasing, filling again. Tents flutter, shields rest against stakes, fires spit fat and oil. But here, in this clearing set apart from the daily thunder of marching and shouting, something deeper is happening. You and the others have been summoned. Not by rank. Not by command. By something older than both. Imagine standing barefoot in the loam of this sacred space. The ground is soft. The trees tall and listening. The wind barely moves. Before you stands the centurion, helmet removed, eyes hard. To his left, a legate, draped in the crimson-trimmed cloak of command. To his right, a small altar smolders, its bronze bowl filled with coals and the burnt offerings of many before you, incense, a feather, a lock of hair, a coin darkened by heat and time. Behind you, silence. You are not in the military now. You are in the presence of Rome's spirit. A priest steps forward, not robed in glory, but in practicality. His hands are blackened by smoke, his eyes deeply shadowed from long nights of interpreting omens and entrails. He carries a small cup. Inside, the blood of a sacrificed bull. Not symbolic. Real. Thick. Still warm. You watch as he dips his fingers, raises them to your brow, and marks you with a streak that smells of metal and ash. Ius iorandum. The ancient phrase. The blood oath. You are now ready. The sacramentum is not spoken lightly. It is not a chant or song. It is not rehearsed or stylized. It is a vow. Your voice joins dozens of others. One by one, men speak, hands to heart or sword, faces stern. Each vow is slightly different, tailored by language, by homeland, by mouth and memory. But they all promise the same thing: to obey without hesitation, to never retreat, to defend Rome and the Emperor even at the cost of one's life, to stand even when the world breaks beneath your feet. Somewhere in the crowd, a boy no older than 16 says the words too fast, stuttering halfway through. The centurion slaps the words back into him with a gauntlet to the cheek. The boy bleeds. He repeats, this time slower, firmer, and Rome accepts him. The oath binds you. Not metaphorically. It is a legal, spiritual, and social contract. It is tattooed invisibly into your soul. If you desert now, you are not merely disobedient. You are sacrilegious. A traitor to the gods. To your brothers. To the very soil beneath your feet. The punishment? Death, of course. But not always swift. Some are crucified near the gates of the camp. A reminder that mercy is for civilians. Others are decimated, a practice so brutal, even the gods are said to look away. If a unit shows cowardice, 1 in every 10 men is chosen at random. Not by merit. Not by fault. By chance. And the rest must beat them to death with clubs. Imagine standing in line, hearing your number called. Knowing your only crime was standing beside the wrong man. That is what it means to be part of a living machine. You do not march for yourself. You march for the whole. The oath binds you in ways you don't understand yet. It changes how you see the world. Your old name? Faded. Your birthplace? A detail. Your new identity is Romanus Miles, a Roman soldier. Even if you were born across the sea. Even if you've never set foot in the Forum. Even if your tongue still stumbles over Latin vowels. Rome does not care where you came from. Only what you will bleed for. In the days that follow, something shifts. Your unit is tighter. More fluid. You anticipate commands before they're shouted. You move as one. The older soldiers start calling you frater, brother. Sometimes in jest. Sometimes in truth. You feel a deepening, this bond, like armor beneath your skin. At night, when the fires burn low and the sky is heavy with stars, some whisper their own oaths. Quiet promises made to lost mothers, absent lovers, forgotten gods. A Gaul scratches the name of his sister into the leather of his belt. An Illyrian builds a small shrine of river stones behind his tent. A Nubian soldier, eyes hard as obsidian, murmurs prayers in a language older than Jupiter himself. Each one believes that their gods still walk with them, even under the watchful gaze of Rome's pantheon. The army makes no room for blasphemy, but it tolerates belief. So long as your sword is sharp, you begin to learn the rhythm of life inside the camp. Not just the drills or rations, but the secret music of soldiering. How to tie your sandals so the blisters bite a little less. How to layer your tunic in the rain so it doesn't cling like wet parchment. How to wrap your fingers around a sword hilt when the nerves start shaking again. No one teaches you these things. You absorb them. Like language. Like pain. One evening, after a long march, a storm rolls across the camp. Lightning shatters the sky. Rain lashes the tents. And still, the fire in the center holds. Men gather around it, steaming and soaked, and someone, maybe you, asks what happens if the oath is broken. A long silence. Then a veteran speaks. Voice like iron dragged over stone. It is better to die screaming in battle than to live with a broken vow. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't need to. The next morning, a new order is barked across the rows of tents. Mobilization. You're moving out. Not for a drill. Not for practice. But for war. Your first campaign. You don't know where. You don't ask. You've taken the oath. You follow. That is all. The march begins before dawn. The road is slick. The air is bitter. But your feet move without complaint. Because now, each step is sacred. Each mile is a prayer. Each blister a badge. And every time your boot strikes the earth, it echoes with the voice of 1,000 oaths whispered before you. You are one of them now. A soldier. A servant. A son of the eagle. And so we go forward, banners rippling, hearts thudding, the oath wrapped around our ribs like a second skin. Ahead, the gods stir. The drums call. And Rome hungers. Let us now step into the rituals of blood and belief. Let us walk into the rituals before battle. Soft light filters through the mesh of the tent's entrance, turning the dust in the air into tiny stars. The crackle of embers from last night's fire drifts low, mingling with the scent of charcoal and ancient incense. Somewhere beyond the canvas, the camp stretches in coiling lines of tents, pikes, and banners, alive with murmured prayers and tensed anticipation. Across this space lies a hidden threshold, the boundary between the ordinary and the sacred. Here, amidst the heat of preparation and the shadows of twilight, the rituals before battle breathe life into the silent souls of soldiers. These are not mere gestures, or simple acts of superstition. Every movement, every whisper, every thread of smoke weaving into the night is charged with the weight of unseen gods and unspeakable fate. You walk through the camp toward a row of simple shrines lining the edge of the sacred grove. Oil lamps glow faint gold in the dusk, illuminating bronze masks and carved faces of Mars, Jupiter, Bellona. Small offerings, grains, wine, coins, nestle beside incense. The smoke curls upward as if reaching for the gods themselves, carrying with it hopes, fears, prayers. One by one, you stop at each shrine, feeling the toll of bucolic calm before what you know may be fire and steel. At the first shrine stands a chestnutwood effigy of Mars, his stately face grave and resolute. You kneel and lift a flask of wine. The liquid glitters as you pour it onto the base of the statue. The taste lingers on your lips, sweet, sharp, metallic. The offering tastes of baptism, of consecration. You imagine Mars gazing down, not just as a god of conflict, but as a father to warriors. You speak the words under your breath, not Latin phrases buried in texts, but simpler, made of longing and trembling. Grant me courage. Steady my arm. Let my first blood be that of our foe, not a brother. Behind you, others do the same. The scent of spilt wine and pressed wood mingles. The air tightens with expectation. At Jupiter's shrine, a legionnaire steps forward, drops a small bronze token into a bowl by a carved eagle's talon. Its sound echoes like a coin falling into darkness. Then he pulls from his pouch a thread, perhaps red, perhaps frayed with time, and ties it to a nail driven into the shrine's base. A token of oath, a binding of loyalty too quiet to be spoken. You mimic the gesture, thread into nail, seal it with a silent promise. Because the oath must hold not just through strength, but in every breath when the fight makes prayer impossible. Then comes the most intimate shrine, a miniature altar for the man's Laras or Penates. A terracotta vessel, oiled black with years of offerings. Inside rests a lock of hair, a scrap of cloth, perhaps a small carved figure, tokens of home, faith, lost time. You reach inside and feel the smooth shard of clay shaped like a figure, its face warm but hands raised in eternal greeting. You whisper your plea for safe return, not for fame, not for gold, but for the chance to be flesh again. Perhaps a son, perhaps a father, perhaps simply a man who breathes without fear. Others wait quietly. Some touch their amulet, or drop a piece of bread, stale, but still enough, to say, "I remember." Camp superstition bubbles beneath every action. Amelia, a recruit from the provinces, pulls from her tunic a small pouch of black earth. She scatters it at the base of her tent. "This," she says, voice almost a whisper, "is dirt from home. From my father's field." You nod, feeling something you've long tucked away, the ache of earth that was yours, but which grows distant as the legion marches. Another slams his fist on a bronze figurine of a god you've never seen, chisel marks still visible. He grips it like a talisman and mutters, "Bring me back." From a distance, a chant rises like a wave. Animosus simul. Bold as one. Fortis in pugna. Strong in battle. In aeternum fidelis. Ever faithful. It begins in small voices, ragged and unpolished, but within moments the camp responds, in voices rough, in hearts steadying. You feel vibrations under your feet as the legion breathes together, a unified pulse rising against the night. Then the sweep of drumbeats, low and insistent. You join a breath, inhale, exhale, the air thudding through your chest like it wants to escape. Words become colors in the air. You let them, fierce, unstoppable. A centurion roars, "Impetum!" And the legion responds with a shout so fierce it seems to crack fire into the night. After the roar, silence returns. Not the calm of peace, but the hush between heartbeats. You kneel by your weapons, sword, spear, shield. You whisper to them, not with words, but with fingertips. You trace the metal, the wood, as though reading an old letter. You speak again, but inside yourself. Be swift. Be true. Bring me home. You leave a spot of oil on the pommel of the sword. They might say it is chance. But you do it anyway. A single torch is lit. Then another. Soon, flickering lines of flame outline the camp's edge. You follow, marching silent. Each footstep echoes on ground that knows laughter and fear. The soldiers weave through shadows toward the outer palisade. Someone hums an old folk tune, bare thread, but enough to pull at the heart. You feel the night wind and the press of figures close, the thread of steel. The air tastes of iron and smoke. And still, you carry that fragile thread of ritual, light and darkness. At the palisade, faces are lit and hidden. No god speaks. No voice booms. But you feel it. In the click of armor, in the grip of your gladius, in the sharp taste of breath. You raise your voice in a broken prayer. If I die, let it be with honor. If I live, let my scars tell stories. And if I fall, let my body feed the soil that cradled this empire. All around, men make gestures, some sign of cross, some garbled relic of a distant tongue. Your tears are unspoken. And there, standing on the lip of something immense, not yet begun, but unthinkably close, you carry more than steel. You carry fear, and faith, and blood. The banners glow above you. Mars waits in brown silence. Your oath hums beneath your skin. The chants still echo. The camp holds its breath. And you are ready? The torches dim slowly as the wind creeps across the camp. Sparks drift upward into the sky like tiny souls returning to the gods. You feel it in your bones, that thick silence that settles before a storm. Back in your tent, you sit cross-legged on the packed earth, your helmet resting in your lap. You turn it slowly, feeling along the inside rim. Many do this, some for superstition, others for comfort. But tonight your fingers brush something new. Etched into the inner lip of the helmet, almost invisible in low light, is a symbol. A sunburst, small, crude, but purposeful. Not yours. Someone wore this before you. And they believed in light. You trace it once, then leave it be. A whisper thanks to a ghost. All around the camp, sleep is both near and impossible. The night is not yet black. There's still color on the horizon, like blood diluted in water. Some men hum. Others polish weapons until their fingers blister. You pass one who's weaving horsehair into a knot on his spear, an old trick he claims keeps the point true. Another burns laurel leaves inside his boot. They all carry their rituals. Tiny, strange, and sacred. One man lies flat on his back, palms up, whispering to no one. Mother, if I fall, find me in the wind. You don't ask his name, but you remember his face. In a quiet corner near the central fire, the Medici, Legion medics, lay out their tools. Bronze scalpels. Rolls of linen. Small clay jars filled with honey, vinegar, and crushed herbs. They do not join the chants. They do not speak of glory. They sharpen blades meant not to kill, but to pull death backward. Their tent smells of thyme and wine, and something coppery beneath. One of them glances at you, offering a faint nod. He's younger than you. His hands scarless. But his eyes? Old. At the farthest edge of camp, just before the tree line, there is a woman. Old, bent, draped in gray wool. She's not a Roman priestess. No title, no rank, but she is known. Every legion has one. The seer. They call her Vates in whispers. No one commands her. No one guards her. Yet she walks the camp like a shadow made of smoke. Tonight she crouches over the embers of her own fire, throwing herbs into the flames, juniper, boneset, ash bark. She reads the shapes. No one asks what she sees. They never ask. But still, some bring her offerings. A button. A tooth. A feather. One soldier kneels beside her, trembling, and says only, "Tell me if I will die tomorrow." She does not answer. She never does. But her silence is often enough. Before first light the camp stirs. No trumpet. No shout. Just the shiver of motion, men rising in unison like stalks in a wind. The fire is rekindled with hushed reverence. You eat quickly, hard bread, olives, strips of dried meat tough as leather. A silent meal. The last one, for some. Armor is buckled with care. Shields are checked, tapped, tested. Pilum are held at the ready, shafts steady in callous hands. And in every soldier's eyes, reflected firelight and something else. Not fear. Not yet. But readiness. As the line forms, centurions walk down the row, inspecting not the soldiers, but the shields. Leather straps are tightened. Edges are checked. And then, one final rite. A binding. Each pair of adjacent soldiers ties a leather cord from their shield to the next. It is symbolic, yes, but also tactical. If one runs, he risks ripping the whole line apart. So they bind. And they stand. One body. One wall. One Rome. The sun crests the hills. The horns finally sound, deep, echoing, like the call of a beast from an older world. And then, silence. You look to your left. To your right. Familiar faces. Eyes hard. Jaws set. You tighten your grip. You breathe in smoke, leather, sweat, and dawn. Somewhere ahead, beyond the fields, beyond the trees, the enemy waits. But here, now, you feel nothing but fire. Not from rage. From ritual. The kind that turns men into gods. And gods into men. You step forward. A single pace. Then another. And then the line moves. Together. Not a march. A revelation. The battle is not yet joined. But already you are changed. And from the shadows of the grove to the bright flash of your blade. The gods are watching. Now let us see how training becomes survival. Let us journey into the forging of flesh and will. Let us walk into the fire of training body and spirit. The battlefield is not where a legionary is born. He is forged in dust, in sweat, in broken bones and blistered feet. He is tempered not by the swing of his sword, but by the grind of endless repetition, until pain becomes routine, and routine becomes instinct. Only then does a man become a weapon. The sun hasn't yet broken the horizon, but the camp already groans with motion. You are woken not by trumpet or call, but by the chill of morning air seeping through your woolen blanket and the sound of sandals thudding against packed earth. Your breath clouds in the dark. You roll up your bedding, knot it tight, and strap it to your pack. Today is training. Just like yesterday. Just like tomorrow. But you feel it now, deep in the joints, in the heart, in the way your feet move before you think. This is no longer something you are doing. This is what you are. You begin with the rudis, a wooden sword thicker and heavier than its iron counterpart. The logic is brutal and simple. If you can master the weight of false war, the real thing will feel light. Your instructor is an ex-gladiator with half an ear and the calm of a man who's buried friends in every province. He demonstrates a slash, down, pivot, thrust. Then again. Then again. Until your shoulder burns and your fingers blister and your mind begs to stop. But it doesn't stop. Not for anyone. Not even you. Hours later, your tunic clings to your body with sweat, and the bruises on your forearms bloom like wine stains. You spar against a partner. No anger, just form. You trade blows. Again. and again, until your muscles remember more than your thoughts. A parry is no longer a choice. It's a reflex. The order comes. Full larica segmentata, your segmented iron cuirass, its weight pressing against your ribs like the hand of Jupiter himself. Straps dig into your shoulders. The helmet clamps down. The scutum feels twice as heavy with every step. The pace? Fast. You run. Across gravel. Through mud. Around the perimeter of the camp. With your sword. With your shield. With everything. Not once. Not twice. But until your lungs scream, your thighs tremble, and your vision darkens at the edges. You run until the sound of your own breath is drowned by the beat of your comrades' boots, until you are no longer a man, but a beat in the war drum of Rome. And when you collapse, you crawl. And when you crawl, you rise again. Then there is the long march. 20 Roman miles. With gear. With weapon. With discipline. You don't speak. You don't look around. You keep your eyes on the boots ahead of you and the dust rising with every step. You learn to breathe through your nose to keep your throat from cracking. You learn to shift your pack slightly every hour to avoid sores. You learn which parts of your body will bleed first, and how to keep going when they do. The earth grows longer beneath you, but your legs become stone. The training with the pilum, the Roman throwing spear, is a different kind of brutality. It's not about brute strength. It's about timing. You line up before wooden targets painted with crude faces, barbarians, rebels, ghosts of enemies yet unmet. The instructor holds a finger in the air, waits, then drops it. You throw. Your arm follows through with a snap. The spear's iron shank flexes on impact, bending so it can't be thrown back. That, too, is Roman design. One strike. One chance. No recovery. Over and over, you retrieve and throw again, until your elbow throbs and your aim wavers from sweat dripping into your eyes. Then comes the dance. Not of celebration, but of death. You learn the testudo, the tortoise. Shields up, interlocked above and on all sides, you become an armored beast of iron and will. You learn to form columns, phalanxes, wedges. Every step is timed. Every pivot drilled. You react not to orders, but to the movements of the man beside you. You become one. And when the centurion throws rocks at the formation to test its strength, they bounce harmlessly off your shell. This is no longer a maneuver. It is a survival instinct. But the training doesn't stop with the body. At night, around the fire, your mind is tested. Veterans tell stories, not of glory, but of failure. Of ambushes in fog-choked forests. Of mistaken orders. Of men who broke rank, only to cause the deaths of 20. These stories are not for entertainment. They are caution. You sit in silence, absorbing them like gospel. Because the dead are not mourned in Rome unless they teach something. Some nights, the instructors order you to sleep without blankets. Others, they feed you half rations for days. Some mornings, they blindfold your group and set you into the woods with only a dagger and a time limit to return. You're not being trained to fight. You're being trained to survive, to adapt, to listen without hearing, to see without light. Then comes the trial no one names. The moment where you are pushed beyond exhaustion, beyond pain. You are denied sleep, denied food, denied comfort. And then you are ambushed. Screams in the night. Fake or real, you do not know. You are ordered to form ranks in the dark, stumbling, half mad. The attack comes fast, wooden weapons, mock enemies, chaos. You fight. You hold. And when it ends, you don't collapse. You stand. Because by then, you no longer need rest to be strong. You are strong because the Legion demands it. And in the quiet hours after, you sit by the edge of the training grounds, blood crusted on your knuckles, your ribs bruised, your mouth dry. You stare into nothing. and feel nothing. Because feeling would mean softness. Instead, you remember the first time you held your gladius and trembled. You remember when your shield felt like an anchor, not a wing. Now, you barely notice the weight. You've been reforged. You are not just a man. You are part of something relentless. You are a Roman soldier. And now, when the gods call for silence, when the hills echo only with breath and purpose, you will know how to move like the wind beneath their wings. Let us enter the world of shadows. Let us become the night. Let us learn the art of silent march. Not all war begins with trumpets. Some begins with breath, held low in the chest, tight behind the teeth. With boots striking soil like whispers. With armor that does not rattle. With soldiers who become shadows. You stand now not in the sunlit training field, but beneath a shroud of stars. The moon is pale and distant. The air is still. Every sound, the creak of leather, the tug of a strap, feels amplified, monumental. But this is the lesson now, silence. Not just the absence of noise, but a practiced, sharpened discipline. Your instructor walks the line, no voice, no command, just a gaze that scans for weakness. A loose buckle? Punishment. A loud breath? Drills begin again. You've trained for war, yes, but this is different. This is for the moments before war. For the nights when surprise is more lethal than the sword. The first rule, move like the wind between trees, felt, not heard. You are taught to walk toe first, to roll the foot across the earth, as if stepping on live coals. Your armor is packed with cloth beneath the plates. Every jangle silenced with wool. Every joint bound tighter than comfort allows. You carry only what you must. A dagger. A short sword. A shield stripped of embellishment. No fire. No excess. No sound. You practice in teams. A line of 5 men moving through underbrush, one behind the other, hand lightly on the shoulder ahead, steps time to each heartbeat. You move through forests, through low fog, through streambeds slick with algae. Sometimes the instructor scatters gravel or potsherds on the trail. Step wrong, and the crunch echoes. Fail, and you begin again. One evening, without warning, you are roused from sleep. You are told nothing. No questions are answered. You are handed a pack, a blade, and a direction. You march. No torches. No maps. Only stars. The silence of the forest becomes oppressive. The sounds you do hear, an owl, a distant branch cracking, feel like warnings from the gods. You pass an old farmstead, abandoned. You do not stop. You do not whisper. The silence becomes holy. Later, you practice in full unit formation, not the thunderous square of daylight, but a serpentine file that winds silently through low hills. The goal is approached without warning. To stand at the enemy's gates before the dog can bark. To strike not just fast, but first. And here, every movement must be perfect. The centurions mark the path with subtle signals, a hand raised, a clenched fist, a downward sweep. You must watch. You must listen with your eyes. Because if the signal is missed, the maneuver fails. And if the maneuver fails, so does the surprise. So does the battle. There are stories, passed down from veteran to recruit, of entire villages that never heard the approach. Only the scream. Only the rush. Only the breath of Rome on their necks. One such tale lingers in the campfire smoke, told in the hush of men cleaning blades. It speaks of a night in Dacia, where a legion crept through fog like wolves. When the mist cleared, only the eagle banner remained, slick with dew, unmoving, at the heart of the camp. No trumpet had sounded. No dog had barked. Just silence. And then the dead. You are tested often. The instructor throws pebbles at your shield in the night. If you flinch, you fail. He lights a torch at random and demands formation, no shouting aloud. You must find your place with gestures alone. You must be ready to fight, or retreat, or faint, or disappear. And when the test ends, you return to silence. No praise. No relief. Just breath. Just the stillness. Eventually it becomes second nature. You walk with grace, with patience. You feel the trail with your skin before your foot. You learn the sound of different earths: gravel, clay, pine needles, wet grass. You feel how the air presses differently in valleys and ridges. Your senses sharpen beyond comprehension. One night you halt the file without command, a scent on the breeze unfamiliar. Moments later, a boar crashes from the brush. You were right. And your comrades know it. You are no longer merely trained. You are tuned. In a clearing deep beyond the range of campfires, you face the final rite. Not a duel. Not a battle. A trial of shadows. You are given a blade and a mark, a dummy wrapped in cloth, hidden among trees. You are to find it. Reach it. Kill it. Without a sound. No branches snapped. No breath caught. No grass crushed. When you return, your blade is stained with paint. The instructor nods. And says nothing. He doesn't have to. They say silence is the home of fear. But you've learned otherwise. Silence is now power. Silence is now strategy. Silence is now you. You are no longer the crashing beast of earlier days. You are the knife in the dark. You are the hush before the trumpet. You are the shadow of Rome. Let us now lift our eyes from quiet hands and step into the battlefield's chaos, where words vanish and only signs remain. Welcome to the language of hands. War is loud, but only after its whisper of fingers and glances has slipped through the line. Before steel meets flesh, commands cross the field in the quiet speech of hands, gestures as deliberate as blades, as binding as oaths. You stand at the edge of a field, dawn pale and uneasy around you. The camp behind is a sigh, the world ahead still dreaming. There is no trumpet. No shout. Only the breath of soldiers and the faint rustle of leather. But communication is happening. All around you. In subtle movements, twitches of fingers, lifts of a wrist, bows of the arm. This is the language of hands. The centurion stands before the ranks, arm extended, not as a gesture of oratory, but as command. Not the theatrical adlocutio of emperors on stone reliefs. Not for crowds. For men who listen with eyes, not ears. A hand angle, a fraction of a degree, means this: hold. Palm turned, this: advance. A fist, collapsed index: retreat. The shift of a shoulder, the drip of an elbow: charge. Every unit has its shorthand. Every man knows when to speak, when to move, when to die. You and your contubernium, the 8 men who share your tent, your life, your death. In practice, your neighbor's twitch of thumb means: shield up. A brush against your cloak. Pivot. A finger trace through the air. Testudo. Over time, your eyes learn to hear without sound. And your hands become thought. A nod from the optio behind. Stand firm. Mercy is a language you've unlearned. But instinct? You speak that fluently. Behind the line stands the signifer, standard bearer gripping the signum, its pole topped with a metal hand or spear, discs shimmering in early light. In formation, the signum does more than inspire, it directs. Unit drifts left, the banner shifts. Need to fall back? The hand turns. Not every command needs voice. Not when an eagle-tipped signpost commands the eyes. Later, under the shade of a thinning canopy, you move as one with your unit. The enemy may be near. The air tastes of moss and tension. Your centurion bends slightly, 3 fingers extended, then curled. The formation flows left. Spears raised to shoulder. You step. Silently. Slowly. On points of earth that freeze at the touch. You are both a soldier and a shadow. The practical grammar of battle. In the open field, voices break the silence. Orders called, Ayasite Pila! Throw your spears! And the line obeys. But before sound is even possible, eyes give allegiance to fingers. Quinking's formation gaps open. Hands sweep. Feet pivot. Line shifts. Spears fly. Often, the enemy never knows what broke them, only that something snapped. Later, when the battle has begun, commands are given on wind and blood. But there were moments, breathless pauses, when music reigned. But those were for the loud moments. For the coded dance before that. Little hands spoke the history of discipline. It wasn't just on the battlefield. Even in camp, or moving, or forging, hands spoke too. Men stacking shields. Carefully tying straps. Cheek straps adjusted by one man's whisper of motion. The optio behind you, holding a vine stick, nods to those faltering. They know. Without words. Hands uphold order. Hands maintain honor. Hands keep Rome in formation. In the legends of ambushes, they speak of entire villages falling before a sound carried. Not from trumpet, but from glint of blade raised by the silent hand. Not from cry, but from echo of disciplined step, knit by fingers unseen. That is when Rome is most dangerous. Not when it shouts, but when it whispers. At dawn, after a night plagued by dreams, you lie in your quaternium's tent. You flex your fingers. You feel the map of gesture in your bones. A finger lifted. A palm splayed. You think of silent orders passed when life hinged on stillness. Yet even now, you feel their weight, their responsibility, their ghosts. Because when sound finally erupts, when ranks collapse and the corner bellows, it is magnified by the quiet before, by the language unsaid. Every war cry, every steel clash, they are born from hands. And this is the quietest chapter of battle, where meaning travels, not in shouts, but in shadow. So let us leave the silent grammar behind. The soldier is trained to fear nothing, but even the hardest armor cracks. And within the silence of the night, beneath the thunder of marching boots, there lies a quiet truth. No one walks into war untouched by fear. And so they carry with them tiny gods. Pieces of home. Bits of memory carved in wood or bronze. They call them amulets. Talismans. But really, they are prayers wrapped in metal. The sun has barely crested the eastern hills, yet already the camp begins to hum with life. You move through the corridors between tents, past the murmuring centurions, the clatter of buckles, the soft snorts of tethered horses. But then, as you pass the edge of your contubernium's quarters, you catch a quieter moment. A soldier, older than most, sits cross-legged on a folding stool. He polishes his gladius with methodical care, but his eyes are on something else. Something clutched tightly in his free hand. You draw nearer. It is a charm. A tiny bronze crescent moon, worn smooth by years of touch. The edges are chipped, the color dulled, but the reverence in his gaze is unmistakable. He does not speak. He doesn't need to. You recognize the look. A man, alone with memory. A gladius may cut. A shield may block. But neither speaks to the invisible, what lurks beyond the reach of steel. The curse of a jealous rival. The bite of bad luck. The illness that creeps into bone beneath a chill wind. The Romans did not trust fate to chance. They wore fate around their necks, or stitched it into their tunics, or buried it under the foundation of their tents each time the camp was moved. A soldier was never truly naked, not when he carried a sliver of belief close to his skin. Though the empire stretched from Hispania to Syria, certain charms were common across all legions. The fascinus, a phallic symbol, sometimes crude, sometimes ornately carved, often worn as a pendant or tattooed onto shields. It was not obscene. It was power. A divine insult against misfortune. Then there were lunuli, crescent moons, typically worn by women, but cherished by men who had wives or daughters waiting far away. Some soldiers would carve them into the wood of their shield handles, where no one would see. Others carried tiny bronze manus vigas, closed fists with the thumb between fore and middle finger, a silent ward against the malocchio, the evil eye. But the most powerful charms? They weren't forged in temples. They were made by hand. Personal. Specific. A lump of earth wrapped in linen. A child's tooth strung on a cord. A coin given by a mother on the day of departure, rubbed smooth over years of battle and prayer. These were not for show. They were for survival. One soldier, a quiet Thracian with a notched eyebrow, carried a tooth in a leather pouch. It wasn't human. It was from a bear. He told no one its story until a night when 4 men sat around a dwindling fire, the smoke drawing shapes against the stars. "It bit my father," he said, tapping the pouch. "But my father won." He didn't smile when he said it. He simply tied the pouch tighter and lay down to sleep. Later, when that man fell in Germania, another soldier buried him with the pouch beneath his tongue. "I don't know what gods he believed in," he said, "but I'll not have him enter their realm unarmed." Before battle, when armor is donned with sacred precision, the charms are always last. A strip of cloth tied around the wrist. A pendant kissed and placed beneath the breastplate. Some whisper a word each time they do it, an oath, a name, or even a number, the day they first left home, the age of their son, the number of comrades lost. Others perform the ritual silently, but with such ritual repetition that their hands know it even in the dark. There is no command for this. No centurion needs to remind his men to carry their talismans. They never forget. At night the camp quiets. Most sleep. But some stir, caught in the murky space between dreams and dread. You once woke to see your 10 mates sitting up, rigid, his eyes wide but unfocused. He was gripping a small iron figurine in one hand, a crude shape, worn with age. He was whispering. Not Latin. Not Greek. A language you didn't recognize. You asked him later what it was. He said, "A god from before Rome." And then nothing more. But he never entered battle without it. Some soldiers carved secret symbols into the inside of their shields. Symbols for protection, others for strength. A few for vengeance. One man had a tiny etching of his sister's name in Greek letters, so small you had to squint to see it. He said he held it with his shield hand so she would never leave him in the fight. Others placed herbs inside the shield grip. Laurel for victory, rosemary for memory, myrrh to ward off death. By the time the shield was lifted, it wasn't just wood and bronze. It was a portable altar. Not all charms brought peace. Some were carried because not carrying them brought ruin. One tale passes down from older legions of a soldier who threw his talisman into the river after a victorious campaign, mocking the gods, mocking the need for protection. He was struck by a javelin the next morning. Not in battle. During breakfast. A missed throw from a fellow legionary during drills. The others said nothing. But from that day on, more men began wearing 2 amulets. Just in case. On the eve of campaign, when the watchfires burn low and the camp grows quiet as ash, you sit and untie the cord around your neck. In your palm rests your own talisman. A coin minted long ago. Not Roman. Gallic, perhaps. You don't remember where you got it. Only that you had it the day you didn't die. You rub your thumb across the face, worn blank. You whisper nothing. But you feel remembered. You've seen men who believe in nothing, no gods, no omens, no fate. They still carry talismans. Just in case, they say. But you can tell. They believe. Maybe not in Jupiter, or Mars, or Mercury, but in something. The shape of a promise, held close. the hope of home, the will to survive. As the command comes down the line and your unit readies to move out, you feel the weight of iron on your shoulders. But more than that, you feel the talisman beneath your tunic. A small lump. Familiar. Anchoring. And as your feet begin to move, as the dust rises in columns and the road stretches wide before you, you whisper, just once, "Walk with me." And somehow you know it will. Let us now move from prayer to bread, from tokens to the tools of hunger and hope. Let us step into the smoke and stories of the field kitchen, where spoons and fire shape brotherhood as much as sword and shield. Let us enter field kitchens. There is a sound in the Legion camp that carries farther than marching boots and clashing swords. It is the crackle of kindling, the scrape of a bronze ladle on the bottom of a dented pot, the low murmur of tired voices swapping stories over steam. In the belly of the army, there is always a fire. And where there is fire, there is food. Or at least, something like it. You rise after a night of dreamless sleep, your back aching against the packed earth, the smell of damp wool in your nose. But above that, something warmer, something richer. Smoke. Spiced smoke, slow smoke, touched with garlic and onion and fat. You push aside the tent flap and see it, the field kitchen, already alive in the pale gray before dawn. It isn't one kitchen, of course. Each contubernum, an 8-man mess unit, prepares its own food. But the space between tents transforms into a sprawling web of cook fires, shallow pits lined with stone, grates made of hammered iron, clay pots darkened by years of soot. This is not a feast, but it is life. And here, between drills and death, the Legion eats. Rome's war machine ran on a simple principle: grain first, everything else later. Each man receives a ration of wheat. Raw. Unmilled. Unbaked. A sack tossed at his feet every few days, heavy as duty itself. It is not a gift. It is not prepared for you. It is your burden. You haul the grain in your sarcina, the soldier's gear bundle, alongside your tools, weapons, and winter cloak. And each night, after marching or training or bleeding, you kneel before the fire and begin the work. You pour it onto a stone. You grind. Back and forth. Back and forth. Shoulders aching. Hands numbing. The sound is rhythmic. Soothing in a way. Like a lullaby of survival. You mix it with water. Sometimes salt, if you're lucky. You bake it on a flat stone over the flame. And then you have it, panis militaris, military bread. Hard as a shield boss, tasteless as boiled parchment. But it fills the belly. And on long nights, that is enough. When water is more plentiful, the grain becomes pulse, a thick porridge cooked low and slow, sometimes for hours if the march permits. It is the backbone of a legionary's diet. You stir it with a stick. You share it with your brothers. You watch the bubbles rise and pop, carrying the smell of brown grain and ash. If you have extras, a bit of cheese, a strip of dried meat, some foraged greens, you toss them in. If not, you stir anyway. Some men call it slop. Others call it home. Alongside the endless wheat comes other rationed goods, aged cheese, tough and tangy, pickled olives, their salt a blessing on your tongue, dried figs or dates when a generous supply line blesses you. But most sacred of all? The broad bean. Fava beans, soaked and boiled and mashed into thick spreads, often mixed with garlic or wild herbs. Some soldiers swear by them. Others curse them for the way they churn the belly. But all eat them. Because when meat is scarce, and it is always scarce, the bean carries you. Meat, for the average legionary, is not a daily thing. It is a moment. It arrives when a goat is slaughtered, or a rabbit is trapped in the underbrush, or a deer stumbles too close to the wrong line. Then comes the feast. Men gather. Fires grow tall. The animal is skinned with rough knives, spitted on iron rods, and turns slowly as fat drips onto the coals. The smell alone can draw a man to tears. It's not just food. It's celebration. Communion. A brief reminder that the body can feel pleasure without guilt. You chew slowly. You laugh more freely. You remember what it is to live. Wine and the magic of vinegar. The Legion drinks wine, but not the kind you imagine. It is sour, often mixed with water, cut with herbs or vinegar to preserve it. Pasca, they call it. A peasant's drink. A soldier's elixir. It is not meant to intoxicate. It is meant to keep you from dying, to cleanse the gut, to lighten the heat, to make the grain go down smoother. You take a sip after every bite, the tang hitting your teeth like iron. And somehow you feel clean. Almost. Each man carries his own patera, a shallow bronze or iron pan, blackened with use. You eat from it. You cook with it. Some scratch names into the underside. Others carve little gods or vulgar jokes. It is as personal as a shield. And far more used. You've seen men weep when one is lost. Not for its cost, but for what it held. But the food itself? That's only half the story. The real nourishment comes from the talk. This is where stories are told. Wounds examined. Scars compared. Where men joke about the stink of the beans, or boast of the lover they'll return to, or mourn the friend they didn't. There is laughter, often crude, sometimes bitter. There is silence, deep and restful. There is song, when the wine runs freely. These are not just meals. They are moments of shared soul. Some units develop favorites. A barley stew boiled with foraged onion grass. A paste of chickpeas and garlic wrapped in flatbread. One contubernarium near yours has taken to adding crushed black olives to everything. They call it black sauce. No one else dares to try it. Another group roasts bulbs of wild garlic and smears them on bread like butter. The breath it leaves is ruinous. But the flavor? Heaven. Even in war, the palate learns to live. Centurions eat better, of course. Their rations arrive earlier, fresher. They have larger tents, dedicated servants. Sometimes they offer scraps to the men. Sometimes they don't. It doesn't breed resentment. Not openly. But you learn to ration your envy. The same way you ration your cheese. With discipline. And a little salt. When supply lines falter, you forage. Wild roots. Nuts. Mushrooms, carefully identified. Even insects, in desperation. Some braver, or hungrier, souls steal from local farms. It is discouraged. Officially. Unofficially, a well-fed man fights harder. And the locals? They fear the eagle on your shield more than their hunger. Food is life. But it is also danger. Spoiled grain. Bad water. Undercooked meat. Dysentery has killed more legions than sword or spear. So the fire is sacred. The boil is mandatory. The smell is tested. And if a man grows pale, he is watched. And his patera is scrubbed with vinegar until it shines. When battle is won, when the dead are counted and the wounded patched, then comes the triumph of taste. Trophies are paraded. Wine flows. Whole pigs roast over great fires. Songs are sung louder. Stories become lies. Men kiss strangers. For one night, the war ends in meat and mirth. And in the morning, the porridge returns. You think of home when you eat. Of your mother's bread. Of the sour fish stew your village made in spring. Of the figs you plucked from a neighbor's tree when you were 12. Sometimes, when the beans hit just right, you swear you taste it again. And sometimes you weep. Just a little. Into your patera. And now, fed and warmed and briefly human, let us step from firelight into a fiercer bond. Not just of food, but of flesh, blood, and oath. Let us walk into the world of bonds of brotherhood. It is not the sword that keeps a man alive in battle, nor the shield, nor the emperor's coin. It is the man beside him. The brother who doesn't flinch when the javelins fall. The one who ties your bandage with shaking fingers. The one who shares his last drop of water when you have none. In the Roman legion, this bond is not taught. It is earned, with blood, with blisters, with silence. You lie on your back in the cold dirt. The stars will slowly above you, bright and indifferent. Somewhere to your right, a soldier is snoring, low, rhythmic, familiar. Your shoulder is pressed to another man's. Your breath clouds into the darkness. The blanket you share is too small, the earth too hard. And yet, you sleep easily. Because you are not alone. You are with your contubernium, 8 men bound together not by blood, but by something far stronger. Need. Trust. Brotherhood. The Roman army is vast. But your world begins and ends with 8. The contubernium is the smallest unit in the legion. You train together. March together. Eat from the same pot. Sleep beneath the same roof. A waxed canvas tent weighed down by centuries of mud and smoke. Over time, your lives entwine. You learn who snores and who doesn't. Who mutters in his sleep. Who sharpens his blade too often, out of habit or fear. Who hums old songs from the provinces when he thinks no one is listening. These details matter more than names. Because knowing a man is knowing how he moves, how he fights, how he bleeds. You didn't like all of them at first. The Gaul spat too much. The Iberian never smiled. The Roman from Campania always quoted philosophers, even when cleaning latrines. But you drilled together. Endless hours of shield walls and mock charges and punishing marches under blazing sun. And slowly, grudgingly, the rough edges wore smooth. You learned to fall in line, not out of discipline, but out of faith. Because the man to your left would raise his shield in time. Because the man behind you would cover your retreat. And that was enough. No one tells you these, but you learn them anyway. Never eat the last bit of cheese unless you offer it first. Never let your brother's wound fester unnoticed. Never lie when another man is staring death in the eye. If he asks you to write to his mother, you say yes. Even if you can't write, you'll find someone who can. It's not all grim silence. Some nights, after a long march, someone tells a joke so foul, so utterly depraved, that even the old centurion chokes on his wine. You laugh until your ribs ache. You slap each other's backs, throw pebbles, insult each other's gods. For a moment, you're not legionaries. You're just men. Young. Alive. Not yet ghosts. And you hold that moment close, because you know how quickly it can vanish. It happens without warning. A skirmish on the edge of a forest. A javelin from the mist. He doesn't even cry out, just drops. You kneel beside him, the mud thick around your boots, your hands clumsy on the wound. It's too deep. Too fast. His eyes flick to yours. And you say something. Anything. A joke. A promise. A prayer. Because silence is worse than death. Later, when the pyre burns, you'll remember his laugh more than his name. You'll carry that sound into the next battle. And the next. There is a kind of oath you never speak aloud. You will not leave him behind. Not while you can walk. Not while you can crawl. You'll drag him if you must. Carry his gear. Bear his weight. And if he dies, you'll carry the message. His name. His words. His coin for the ferryman. Not because Rome demands it, but because he would have done the same for you. In battle, the shield wall is more than a tactic. It is a promise. You lock your shield edge with the man beside you. If he falls, there's a gap. And that gap can kill everyone. So you hold. Even when your arm shakes. Even when your legs falter. Even when blood runs down your fingers and your teeth ache from clenching. You hold, not for Rome, but for him, the man to your left, your brother. Later, in quiet moments, you talk about home. Not always directly. Sometimes it's just, "My father used to make bread like this." Or, "There's a girl in Antioch who sings like a flute." You listen. You nod. You share nothing and everything. Because sometimes, the only way to carry your pain is to carry someone else's. After a year, you move like a single thing. You toss each other apples mid-march and catch them without looking. You know who will falter first on a climb, and who'll step in without a word. You know who whispers their prayers at night, and who's stopped praying altogether. You don't talk about love, but it's there. In every unspoken gesture. In every shield raised. In every hand offered without asking. One day you'll muster out. If you're lucky, you'll get land. A pension. Maybe a vineyard or a post in some distant colonia. You'll sleep in a real bed. Eat fresh bread. Hold someone close. And yet, every night your hand will drift toward where your gladius once lay. You'll listen for footsteps outside your door. You'll miss the stink of the tent, the smoke, the snoring, the stories. And most of all, you'll miss them. The ones who lived, and the ones who didn't. Your brothers. Now, with hearts heavier and bonds unbreakable, let us turn our eyes to the helmets we wear, not just as armor, but as shrines of memory and faith. There is a silence that forms beneath a Roman helmet. A small, echoing world of breath and metal, where the world grows distant, and a man hears only the rush of blood and the mutter of memory. Beneath the curve of iron and bronze, where sweat pools and prayers are whispered, secrets linger. Secrets that never reach the ears of commanders. Secrets carved in desperation. In love. In fear. You lift the helmet from its hook with both hands. It's heavier than it looks, solid bronze, cool to the touch. Its surface bears the marks of years, small dents from drills, scratches from brush, streaks where blood once dried and was wiped away. You tip it toward the rising sun and catch the shimmer of old oil across the curve. A faint reflection returns your gaze. Not quite your face, not anymore. The cheek plates swing loose. The inner lining smells of leather and salt. And inside, just above the brow, scratched by a stylus into the thin copper plate, are the words: Ave Lucia. Custodi me. Hail, Lucia. Guard me. To the world, a Roman helmet, the Gallia, is a symbol. A silhouette on every coin. A gleam on every statue. The curl of the neck guard, the sweep of the cheek pieces, the sturdy crossbar that runs over the skull like a divine signature. But to the soldier, it is something else entirely. It is a hiding place. A shielded breath. A place where fear is allowed to whisper. You do not cry in the open. You do not pray loudly before your comrades. But inside your helmet? You speak. Sometimes with your voice. More often with a knife. Inside nearly every helmet, there are marks. Initials. Prayers. Drawings. Names. Some are crude, a jagged fish, the symbol of early Christian hope. Others are beautiful, flowing script in Latin, Greek, or native tongues now lost. You've seen one helmet with a tiny carved horse leaping mid-gallop. Another bore a handprint drawn in soot, preserved with beeswax. One veteran had scratched a full verse from Virgil's Aeneid inside the brow, so tightly packed you needed firelight to read it. And always there are names. Sometimes just one. Sometimes dozens carved by comrades, family, lovers. Each one a thread pulled tight across the battlefield. There was a man once, Flaccus, from Baetica, who spoke to his helmet every morning. He'd lift it like a bull, close his eyes, and mutter a name before placing it on his head. No one asked whose name it was. But one night, during a rare storm delay, you took a risk and looked inside. A small wooden charm was glued into the dome, a carved sun, burned with the initials SF. When Flaccus died in Illyricum, that helmet passed to another soldier. But the charm? It stayed. No one removed it. Not out of fear, but respect. While standard issue helmets were uniform, men found ways to personalize them. Some attached dyed horsehair crests, red, black, gold, not just for rank, but for pride. Others etched small designs on the neck guards, a falcon in flight, a crescent moon, a snake eating its tail. One Syrian auxiliary painted his cheekplates deep blue and adorned them with stars, each dot made from powdered silver mixed with wine. Not for beauty, but because his people believed the stars watched over the brave. Each design a map, of homeland, of belief, of the face behind the iron. You once held the helmet of a fallen comrade. It was heavier than you remembered, perhaps not in weight, but in presence. Inside was a small bone charm tied with a red thread. A child's finger bone, worn smooth. Next to it, a mark scratched into the leather. Radi Mihi, returned to me. Who had said it? A lover? A mother? The man never returned. But the helmet remained. And the message, worn, smeared, sacred, endured. Moments before the charge, the camp is breathless. You tighten your straps. Check your blade. Kneel to tie a sandal. Then you reach for the helmet. There is a stillness as you lower it over your head. A hush. The world narrows. Sound grows muffled. Your own breath becomes a storm. And you whisper. Maybe a god's name. Maybe a child's. Maybe nothing, just the rhythm of your heart pounding against metal. Inside that dome of bronze, it hears everything. The ragged breaths of fear. The grind of your teeth. The cry you bite back when the blade tears skin. It holds your curses. Your promises. Your regrets. When the battle ends and you remove it, you sometimes swear it breathes, just once, like an exhale of smoke and memory. A helmet is not just worn. It is tended. Every night you clean it. Rub it with oil, olive or bear fat, depending on supply. You polish the metal until it shines faintly, even under clouded stars. If a scratch cuts across your carved prayer, you retrace it. Not out of vanity, but because that prayer matters. When a soldier dies, his helmet is not discarded. It may be burned with him, or buried beside him, or, if no time allows, hung from a post with his name, a silent marker. Sometimes another man will inherit it, but only if the spirit feels right. One soldier tried on a helmet that once belonged to a man slain in his sleep. He wore it for half a day, then threw it into the river. I could still hear him breathing, he said. You think of your own helmet now, of the marks you've made, the lines etched inside, the message to your mother, carved in Greek, the crude sketch of a dog, your dog, the one who followed you to the barracks as a child. You think of the dent from that skirmish in Judea, the crack you patched with bronze wire. It is not a piece of gear. It is your life, curved into metal. Your thoughts. Your hopes. Your name. And one day your memory. So now, as we lift the helmet gently from our heads, let us slip into darker shadows, where silence is not sacred, but survival. Let us walk beside the most dangerous men of the Legion, the Night Scouts. The night is not empty. It breathes. It listens. It watches. And if you move carelessly through it, it kills. But there are men who enter that breathless dark willingly, without torches, without banners, without song. They are the eyes of the Legion, the whisper before the war cry. The ones who see the enemy before the enemy knows he's being seen. They are the Night Scouts. The fires are low. The camp is silent. The last clang of armor has faded into the dusk, replaced by the slow murmur of sleep, the kind that comes only from exhaustion, not peace. But beyond the perimeter, Just at the edge where light gives way to shadow, movement stirs. Not loud. Not clumsy. Just the soft adjustment of leather straps. The whisper of a knife sliding free from its sheath. The crunch of one deliberate footstep, pressed into soft earth. You watch them go, the scouts, and know that if you blink, you might miss them entirely. You're not meant to see. That's the point. Not just anyone is selected for the night. To scout ahead of a legion, to pass unseen into foreign terrain, where every leaf could conceal an arrow, every dog's bark could betray you, takes more than courage. It takes stillness, awareness, the ability to move without moving. The best night scouts come from places where hunting was a way of life. Gauls, Numidians, Thracians, men who grew up in forests, on mountainsides, in the shifting sands of the east. But Romans too, poor farmers from the hills around Arpinum, who learned to stalk foxes in the mist. They are not always the strongest, but they are always the most still. A scout travels light. No helmet, too heavy, too loud. No gladius, too short for warning, too long for subtlety. Instead, a pugio, dagger, sharp and simple. Sometimes a bow, if the terrain favors range. A sling, silent and deadly in the hands of those who've practiced since childhood. Darkened tunic. Sandals padded with cloth. No glint, no shine. Even the metal buckles are blackened with soot and wax. They carry no torches. No water skins that slosh. No coins that jingle. They are the wind, pressed into human form. Before a scout leaves, there is silence. He sits apart from the fire, eyes half closed, steadying his breath. He listens to the sound of the camp, to the rhythm of boots, the clatter of pots, the crackle of fire. He memorizes it. Because once he steps into the trees, into the hills, into the enemy's land, every non-legion sound must stand out like a thunderclap. Sometimes, another soldier gives him a charm, a token for luck. A carved bone, a twist of wool, a coin rubbed so smooth it feels like glass. He doesn't say thank you. He just nods. You've followed one once, not into battle, but into the dusk just past the picket line. At first, you could track him. Then he stepped behind a tree and vanished. No rustle. No branch moved. He was there, then he wasn't. Later, when he returned, 3 hours past moonrise, his face was damp with dew. His boots were muddy. His eyes were hollow. But his voice? Steady. There are 3 fires in the glade. 20 men. 2 horses. 1 sentry who falls asleep every third breath. He says it without pride. It's just what he saw. Being caught isn't the worst thing. It's being almost caught. The moment when you're pressed flat beneath a thorn bush, your breath burning in your throat, as enemy sandals pass within arm's reach. When you feel the hiss of a blade pulled from a sheath 5 paces away. When an owl cries and you flinch, and realize it wasn't an owl, but a signal. That's when your heart becomes a hammer, and your mind must remain a whisper. Sometimes they leave marks, small ones. A twisted branch, a cairn of 3 stones, a line scraped into bark. Coded signs for the next scout, or for their own way back. The Legion has its own sign language for night work, simple, sharp gestures. But in the dark, even a glance is luxury. So they leave their trail in the landscape itself. The world becomes a map, and they are the only ones who can read it. They don't just look for enemies. They look for opportunities. A low ridge where the archers can stand. A shallow stream that could slow a cavalry charge. An animal trail that leads behind the enemy line. They remember the way leaves bend underfoot. How smoke drifts between hills, where the moonlight fails to reach. This knowledge, gathered in silence, with risk in every breath, can decide entire battles. And yet, no statue will ever bear their names. They are not fearless. They are intimate with fear. They feel its shape, know its scent, learn how to keep it small and quiet in the gut, like a coiled snake they've made peace with. The worst part, they say, is the waiting. Not the danger, but crouching in the dark, alone, for hours, waiting for the enemy to do something. Anything. The wind shifts. The leaves murmur. A branch snaps. You freeze. And wait. Sometimes a scout doesn't come back. There's no sound. No warning. Just a gap. An absence. At dawn, the centurion may send another. Or not. Scouts know what they risk. That's why the others do not ask questions. They wait. They hold their breath. And when the fire burns low and the name is not spoken again, they sleep. And try not to dream. Some say a scout once crawled through a battlefield strewn with corpses, pretending to be dead for 2 days, just to spy on a Carthaginian supply train. Another claimed to have followed a Germanic war chief back to his tent, and stolen his boots while he slept. The night is not empty. It breathes. It listens. It watches. And if you move carelessly through it, it kills. But there are men who enter that breathless dark willingly, without torches, without banners, without song. They are the eyes of the legion, the whisper before the war cry, the ones who see the enemy before the enemy knows he's being seen. They are the night scouts. The fires are low. The camp is silent. The last clang of armor has faded into the dusk, replaced by the slow murmur of sleep, the kind that comes only from exhaustion, not peace. But beyond the perimeter, just at the edge where light gives way to shadow, movement stirs. Not loud. Not clumsy. Just the soft adjustment of leather straps. The whisper of a knife sliding. War does not pause for the wounded. It tramples them. Screams blend with steel. The ground drinks warm blood. And yet, amid the crush of limbs and the thunder of death, there are men who kneel instead of fight. Who carry, not kill. Who sew instead of slash. The legion's Medici are not poets. They do not wear laurel crowns. But in the darkest hour, their hands are the only ones that matter. The battle has ended. You survived. But not untouched. Your arm burns. Your chest rattles. And the taste of iron fills your mouth. You stagger, boots dragging through trampled grass, toward the medical tent, or what passes for one. A makeshift canopy of canvas stained brown and black, stretched across poles jammed into earth that saw blood before breakfast. There is no order here. Only motion. Grunts. Cries. The bubbling gurgle of a collapsed lung. And over it all, the measured voice of a medicus. Hold him. Tight. He is not a doctor as we know them. The Roman medicus walks a line between healing and horror. Trained, perhaps, in Alexandria? Maybe self-taught on corpses and manuals. His tools are ancient, but precise. Bronze scalpels, forceps, bone saws, iron probes. Some clean. Some not. He does not flinch. He has seen too much to flinch. His eyes are steady as he examines the wound in your side, a tear from a gladius, not deep, but messy. He calls for wine. Not to drink. To pour into the wound. You scream. He does not stop. Laid out on a board beside him are the instruments of his craft. A curved knife for slicing. Hooks for drawing flesh. Cautery irons, heated in coals to sear vessels closed. A hollow tube, a catheter for draining infection. Needles and gut string, for stitching skin with trembling speed. There is also honey. Clean, golden honey. Applied to wounds to fight infection. Wine, strong and sour. Vinegar, sharper still. They are not luxuries. They are lifelines. The capsarii, orderlies named after the medical satchels they carry, move fast. They hold the limbs. They wipe the blood. They press their knees to a thrashing chest to keep a man still while the knife bites. They do not speak. They simply obey. And pray, silently, that today, fewer die than yesterday. Sometimes there is no choice. A leg shattered beyond repair. A hand black with rot. The medicus gives a man a stick to bite. Sometimes, if there's time, a soporific, poppy milk, strong wine, a crushed root. But usually, just the stick. The saw begins. A scream tears through the tent like a javelin. You do not look away. Because next time, it might be you. And you'd want someone to look. To remember. The Romans called them valetudinaria, makeshift hospitals set up behind the front lines. Orderly. Efficient. Brutal. Men are triaged, those who will die quickly, those who may survive, and those worth saving. It is not unkindness. It is calculation. One man saved means two more can return to battle. The medicus lives in numbers, not names. But he remembers them all. Not all healing comes from blades. There are poultices, made from garlic, onion, yarrow, comfrey. Wounds packed with moss. Burns soothed with pig fat and rose oil. A man from Numidia carries a pouch of desert herbs, bitter, fragrant, sacred. He murmurs in a language no one else knows, binding your wound with smoked cloth. And somehow, you sleep. Healing is not heroic. It is pus, and fever, and bone grinding bone. You carry your scars like medals. Some men refuse to show them. Others trace them with fingers each night. A reminder that they did not die. Not yet. When a man dies on the table, the Medici do not turn away. They close the eyes. They wash the blood. They place a coin in the mouth if there's time. Not always for Sharon. Sometimes, just for memory. Young men are chosen for calm hands and sharp eyes. They practice on pigs. On corpses. On their own thighs sometimes, to learn pressure. They are taught not just how to cut, but when not to. And when to lie. It's not deep, they say, even when it is. Because hope can heal, too. Sometimes. Later, after the fires dim, the moans soften. The tent grows still. The medicus sits with his hands in a bowl of vinegar and ash, scrubbing until the blood lifts. He does not sleep. He writes. Not poetry. Not prayers. Just names. And wounds. A record no one will read. But he keeps it anyway. Because he must. Now let us leave the heat of the tent, the scent of blood and bitter wine. Let us return to the road. And to something older than medicine. Let us walk into the myth and memory of symbols of fortune. Rome had her gods. Her laws. Her generals. But in the space between sword strikes and prayers, there was something older. A whisper in the wind, a twitch in the gut, the curl of smoke from a morning fire. A soldier may march under the eagle of Jupiter, but deep down, he walks in the shadow of chance. And chance must be pleased. It begins in the still hour before dawn. Not with the trumpet. Not with the centurion's bark. But with the call of a raven. One cry. Two. Then silence. The entire tent stills. No one speaks. No one moves. One soldier swears softly, spits into the dirt. Another taps 3 times on the wooden post beside him, an unconscious gesture. No one wants to say what they're all thinking. Today, someone is going to die. The Romans were masters of ritual, of signs, of sacred observances. Before every campaign, augurs, priests of omen, read the flight of birds, the movement of beasts, the shape of entrails pulled steaming from sacrificed animals. A liver with a black spot? Halt the march. A hawk flying left to right? Good fortune. Advance. But the soldiers carried their own rituals, deeper and older than temple rites. Passed down from mothers and grandmothers. From shepherds. From thieves. From tribes Rome had conquered, and quietly absorbed. They touched wood, avoided odd numbers, never sharpened a blade on a rest day. Some drew lines in the dirt before stepping over them. Not because they believed, but because, what if? In every unit there are men who seem untouchable. They walk through arrow storms and emerge without a scratch. Their tent never floods. Their fires always catch. Their enemies falter when they're near. They don't brag. They don't explain. But others notice. And soon they're moved forward, not by order, but by whispers. Let Gaius take point. Send Scipio on that patrol. He's lucky. They become living talismans. Carried not in the hand, but in the line. If that man's in your squad, you breathe easier. If he's not, you ask for reassignment. They wear them always. Small bronze pendants. Pieces of carved bone. Knotted hair bound with wax string. One man stitched a feather into the hem of his tunic, a gift from a falcon that landed on his shield once during drills. Another carried a woman's ring, not on his finger, but tied to his belt where it would jingle against his hip. One even tattooed his left palm with a pattern of dots, 7 in total, in a secret shape his grandmother swore would confuse death. He made it through 3 campaigns, then died of fever in a clean tent. The others never spoke of it. But no one ever got that tattoo again. There are stories, always stories, of a man who refused to go into battle because he dropped his eating spoon that morning. He was flogged for insubordination. But the next day, a javelin struck the very spot he would have stood. Another tale tells of a Gallic auxiliary who dreamed of red flowers before every battle. If he dreamed them in bloom, victory. If he dreamed them trampled, loss. Once, he stayed silent. They marched anyway. The legion was nearly destroyed. After that, even the hardened officers asked what he saw before sunrise. Some men seem odd. They mutter, walk in circles, refuse to eat until the moon rises. But their presence shifts something. Fights go smoother. Ambushes are avoided. Rain falls on their fire, and no other. They are not mocked. They are feared. Sometimes, men leave small offerings outside their tent. A figure-8 coin. A strip of cloth. Not as gifts, but payment. To stay on their good side. Just as there are lucky men, there are cursed ones. You feel it before anyone says a word. Their tent is always colder. Their boots wear through faster. The man beside them always falls first. Sometimes they know it. They speak softly. They avoid others. Sometimes they deny it, laugh louder, boast more. But no one sits close. Not for meals. Not for watch. Their gear is used last. Their water is drawn from the far barrel. And if they die, no one touches their patera. Not even to clean it. A dog following the column is good luck. Unless it's black. Unless it howls. Unless it leaves before a battle. Crows mean death. Unless they gather in threes, then they mean victory. A toad in your boot is a blessing. Unless it's dead. Unless it blinks. Unless. There are always exceptions. And the men know them all. Some speak to Fortuna, goddess of chance. Others to Mercury, hoping for speed. Some mutter pagan names from the east, dark, guttural, half-some. One soldier kneels before every march, touches his sword to his lips, then to the earth. No one asks why. They just wait until he's done. You've seen it. In helmets. On shields. Scratched into the wood of a javelin shaft. Felix lucky. Fortuna ducks it. Fortune leads. One shield bore a full poem, etched so faintly it could only be read in the right light. Another had a crude drawing of a cat, wide-eyed, tail curled. When the bearer was killed, the man who took his place painted the same cat again. and lived. Before a big battle, some men leave things behind. A coin in the dirt. A lock of hair tied to a tree. A stone balanced on another stone. Take this, they whisper to the gods. And leave me. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But every soldier keeps the symbol. Because when the world narrows to blade and bone, you cling to what you can. And now, as the omens fade into smoke, let us return to daylight, to drums, to banners lifted high. Let us march home. Not to rest, but to be seen. Let us walk into the triumphant return. When you've spent months, or years, under the dust of roads and the roar of battle, returning to Rome is like waking from a fevered dream. The air is sharper. The stones underfoot are stable, almost kind. And amid the cheering crowds, you carry both your scars and the silence they left behind. You stand at the lip of the camp, bayed by banners stained with sweat and blood. Your armor is polished, by necessity, by tradition, but beneath the bronze, your body is no longer the same. Scars, healed and aching. A limp that shoots through you when you shift weight. A twitch in your right thumb where a javelin grazed you so long ago. Still, you stand tall. The gates of the city open. Not only for the legionary, but for the idea of Rome reborn with each returning spear. You pass beneath triumphal arches, columns carved with victories you helped secure. Citizens throng the streets. Children wave leafy garlands tossed from balconies. The aroma of fresh bread and roasted meats drifts over the crowd. Musicians play horns and lyres, distant strains you recognize deep in your bones. And you realize, home has a heartbeat, and you've forgotten its rhythm. In front of you, captives line the procession. Banners from conquered tribes with strange symbols, and signs dipped in blood and dust. Your heart tightens, not with pride, but at the weight of memory. You recall nights in foreign forests, the flash of shields, the metallic tang of terror. Now, those memories stand behind you like silent witnesses to who you've become. Still, you walk on. At the forum, dais rise. Senators watch, fluttering in togas, their faces masks of approval. But it's the wine that bids you back to life. A feast follows, open to all involved in the campaign. You sit not with palates of office, but with men who shared your blood. Meat roasted on spits, bread fresh, wine rich and warm. There is laughter, but softer, more brittle. You joke about the heat, the mud, the weight of pack and blade. But still, you feel distance from your laughter, as though you're hearing someone else's voice. Because you are not the same man who marched away. You receive gifts, a cloak, land deeds, a small farm on the frontier. You sign your name again, on a parchment that feels alien. But what you cherish most is something unspoken, a veteran's honor. The handshake of your centurion, his grip still firm, still proud, even as your eyes meet. No voice needed. Later, under the anonymity of dusk, you tug the cloak closer, breathe deep, and remember those who did not return. You whisper their names. No stone bears them, but your memory does. That night, the revelry fades. You return to quarters perhaps still camp-like, or maybe a small apartment. You lift your helmet, now too snug, too silent. You trace the etchings inside, the name of mother, the shield mark. A small nod to memory. And for a moment, you feel yourself again, not warrior, not symbol, but man. Settling into grief, into gratitude, into the quiet center of survival. In the coming weeks, the empire hums around you in civilian colors, merchants calling, chariot wheels, the clink of glasses in crowded taverns. Yet within, the discipline remains. You wake at daybreak, not as a civilian, but as someone still shaped by order and routine. You practice with your gladius, not for war, but for muscle memory. Your restlessness commands practice. A boy sees you. His eyes go wide. Were you a soldier? You nod, stamp your boots silent. and without words he sees the same scar across your chest that you wear like a story. Some of your brothers in arms settle near you. Others disperse across provinces. You gather at market stalls for shared meals. You compare scars. Your voices are quieter now. But the bond remains, as certain as when joined in line against the barbarians. You realize peace is not a place. It's the breathing space to rebuild. You walk the roads again, this time as farmer, farmer's son, maybe even mentor. You plant seeds passed down as rewards for your service. In every furrow, you sketch both earth and memory. You think of the road and of Rome. Sometimes you falter, an echo of a scream surfaces in the night. A flash of dying eyes, the hiss of blade, the sting of grief. But the land absorbs you. It listened while blood was hotter. Now it calls you to slow. And so you walk between two lives, wounded soldier, gentle cultivator. This is not the end of the path. But it is the return. From campaigns and carnage. From oath to home. And from the echo of banners to quiet breath. The sword lies quiet now. The shield leans, forgotten, against a wall of stone. Yet the soldier remains, unchanged by choice, transformed by time. He steps from the forge of war into the slow rhythm of peace, carrying the echo of campaigns in every heartbeat. This is not an end. It is metamorphosis, the journey into stillness with a body forged in noise. You stand one last time in a row of men, a line not of armor and commands, but of release. The signifer lowers the eagle standard. The trumpets do not sound. Only a clerk calls each name. Gaius Maximus Veridianus. You step forward. Your pack, aged and patched, is filled not with gear, but with documents, title deeds to land, signed by the governor and witnessed by men whose names you once would never speak. They clasp your forearm. No cheers. No songs. Just a breath. And then you're free. You return home with coin. A small pension meant to replace a share of loss, limbs, time, innocence. You invested in a plot of land. Not fertile. Borderland. Just enough. The back of your mind, always clenching, begins to soften, slowly. But the future is unfamiliar. Your hands itch to sharpen a sword. Instead you dig. You plant oats. You learn to turn thought to labor, not steel. Your memories slip like water at first. Then they remain, quiet, telling stories when the evening wind blows. Word travels fast. Legionary returned. Soon, recruits arrive at your doorstep, mostly local lads, frightened at the weight of their own weapons. You don't speak of battles. You speak of discipline. Of how each step must serve the line, not the ego. You teach them to march with purpose. To carry packs lighter than their thoughts. To listen, not just for commands, but for breath. And at night, when the fire's dim, they ask what it means to be a soldier. You clasp your teeth. And say, "It is one of many lives we will live." They nod without understanding. But they trust. Because they see in you not a hero, but a man who endured. If you left behind a home, stone walls, olive trees, a woman who cried when you held her again, then that small world waits with both joy and suspicion. Your hand trembled the first time you touched her cheek again. She smelled like time. You held her, and it didn't hurt. Not until you remembered the sword. But some come back to nothing. A burned hut. Olive trees cut down. Children grown into strangers. Some stand on empty ground, blessing it with tears. You stay if you can. You build. You plant. You reclaim the land with sweat and stubbornness. Life after the sword comes slow. And then, roots grow. Years on, the robe of sagacity rests lightly on your shoulders. A neighbor seeks you out for disputes. You keep your voice calm. No sword. No command. Just fairness, grounded in discipline, not distance. People lean into your voice, away from your armor. you have become a foundation. At harvest, you make simple offerings, grains laid in a circle for those still marching in some distant place. At festivals, you attend but never glory, only remembrance. Sometimes, under the moon, you trace your scars in the dark. They are maps of paths taken, of what was given, of what you carry now, without a blade. Not all scars fade. Sometimes the night swells with what you cannot name. Shouts, steel, screams. You wake, hands on the pulse of your chest. But dawn comes, and you rise. Your body remembers you are not enemy. Your village remembers you as neighbor. And slowly, the edges soften. Your farm grows, your memory shrinks. But not into oblivion. You preserve it. You tell. You pass on story as warning. You speak of silence after battle. Of small charms carried into wars. Of broken helmets. Of those who never came back. And the young men listen. Because they know the sword is a seduction. They sense the truth in your voice. They sense the cost. In the evenings, you walk among the olive groves, where birds settle into branches heavy with fruit. You breathe. No orders. No commands. You feel the slow pulse of peace. Your eyes soak in the quiet. A different kind of unity. A promise fulfilled, not by conquest, but by survival. Now, as the world dims gently behind you, we approach the last step of the journey. The soldier becomes memory. Not between triumph and drumbeat, but in the slow patter of rain on a gravestone. In the carving of a name, the tilt of a standard, the murmur of stories passed down. The memory of a legionary is not a ripple. It is the call of the eagle echoing through stone, flesh, and forever. Walk any ancient road past the boundaries of a legionary camp, and you step into a silent testimony. Tens, hundreds, of carved stele line the wayside, each marking a life once armor-clad, sharpened, and breathing. A simple panel of stone. A name. A rank. A legion. Some bear the years served. Others a brief epitaph. Semper Fidelis. Miles et Frater. Here, memory is forged in limestone. Here, the man becomes a sentence. A presence without flesh. Often, the stones aren't from family. They are from those who stood beside the fallen, 10 mates, brothers by blade. Inscriptions record this. Marcus Valerius, destroyed on the Danube, his shield carried by Sextus, his brother in arms. A soldier without kin finds kinship in memory wrought by others. This is how remembrance endures, carved by the living, for the living. In rare cases, stone does more than name. Pictures accompany text. Reliefs show the deceased as he stood, shield raised, spear at rest, helmet tucked under arm. One echo we find in Nicopolis, Egypt, a stele showing a legionary in full armor, carved as if stepping from bronze into stone. A life made immortal. Not all memory was personal. Some names were lost, but not forgotten. Monuments like Trajan's trophy in Mesha form colossal shoutouts across time. The triumph over Dacia etched in stone and relief, standard bearers, soldiers, captives, frozen in honor, pain, victory. Here, the memory of a legionary becomes a legion's memory. In a German colony once stood the Drussustein, a cenotaph to a fallen general. Here, legionaries marched annually. Around it, they remembered in movement, in ritual, in breath. Memory reborn in every step. What of those lost in defeat? In the shadowed valleys where legions perished, where bones whitened under bark, and standards lay buried in mud, some memories were buried too. Yet the land remembers. In the quiet places, hunters find fragments, helmets, shields, letters scorched and folded. Each remnant whispers, "I was here." Stele bearing the names of soldiers from the frontiers, Dacia, Mesha, the eastern limes, stood, not just for the dead, but for shared presence. Latin and local languages make rare appearances. Names linger in stone despite time, conquest, erasure. Here, soldiers remembered themselves beyond Rome, as individuals and as part of a story. As Cicero said, whispered by those who remember both words and men. The life of the dead is set in the memory of the living. Romans understood memory as more than memory. It was immortality in quiet form. For the legionary, survival did not end in death. It continued in carved line, in whispered name, in footsteps tracing paths of stones. Even when stones crumble, stories endure. Grandsons trace the names. Children learn of valor, of loss, of path from shield to spirit. Memory survives in meals shared, in quiet nods to ancestors, in becoming. Our legionary lies nowhere and everywhere. In dust and stone. In song and silence. In every man's heartbeat at the thought of blood and brotherhood. The march is done. The sword is laid down. But the memory? It still marches on. Thank you for walking this journey. May these echoes of a Roman soldier's life and memory linger in your thoughts, and may you carry their story into your own.